The laughter around the dinner table was so loud it rattled the wine glasses. Tyrone stood at the head, grinning, retelling that story, the one he knew would sting. "You should have seen Monica," he said, waving his fork like a trophy. "All that attitude gone the minute she forgot the client's name. Man, I had to step in and save her from herself." His brothers roared. Anthony slapped the table. Reggie nearly choked on his beer. And me? I sat still, smiling the way women are trained to when they're bleeding in public. Small, polite, invisible. Tyrone leaned toward me, eyes glinting. "Say something, baby. Don't be shy now. Tell them how you messed up." Something inside me cracked. Quiet, clean, final. Because from the doorway came a voice that didn't belong in his kingdom of laughter. "Funny," said Renee Lawson, stepping into the light. I thought real men didn't need an audience to feel big. The room froze. Tyrone's grin faltered, and before the night was over, every secret he'd buried beneath charm and whiskey was about to come clawing into the open. Before we dive into Monica Pierce's story, a raw tale of humiliation, quiet endurance, and the moment one woman finally decided enough was enough. Drop your city below and don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. Because what you're about to hear isn't just drama, it's a mirror. It's what happens when a man builds his power on someone else's silence, and what it looks like when that silence finally breaks. Now, let's rewind to where it all began. 3 hours earlier, the house already felt like a stage. The smell of lemon oil and roasted chicken clung to the air, and I could hear the faint jazz playlist Tyrone had picked out. Something classy, he said, so his brothers could see what a refined home he'd built. What I'd built, actually. But credit was never part of the deal. The sunlight filtering through the blinds made neat stripes across the dining table, the same table he'd once slammed his hand against when I'd dared to speak out of turn. I ran my fingers along the wood, tracing the faint dent still there. He hadn't noticed it, but I had. Every day. The clock on the wall read 4:13 p.m. 3 hours until company. 3 hours until I had to perform again. I'd spent the whole morning cleaning, ironing the napkins, polishing the wine glasses, making sure every fork faced the same direction. When Tyrone's brothers came over, everything had to be immaculate. If one thing was off, I'd hear about it later. He came downstairs while I was setting the last dish. The sound of his cologne hit me before his voice did. That expensive wood and leather scent he wore like armor. I checked my reflection in the microwave door. Smooth hair, neutral makeup, smile rehearsed. Everything about me neat, contained, small. That's how Tyrone liked it. That's how I'd learned to survive him. When his footsteps thundered down the stairs, I didn't even flinch anymore. My body had adapted. He appeared in the doorway, adjusting his cufflinks, looking like something out of a magazine. Tall, handsome, confident. The kind of man people respected. The kind of man no one ever believed could be cruel. "Monica," he said, eyeing the table, "you finally learned to iron properly." I swallowed. "Yes, Tyrone." He grinned. "That's my girl." My girl. 2 words that used to sound like love, but had become chains. He walked closer, trailing his fingers along the edge of the counter like a man inspecting property. "Mom would have been proud. You've come a long way from that apartment you grew up in." There it was, the casual dagger, a reminder of how far below him I started. "I wanted it to look nice for your brothers," I said quietly. "Oh, it will," he said, brushing a speck of imaginary dust off his sleeve. "Just remember to stay in your lane. Don't get too chatty about things you don't understand." The words hit like slaps, even when they came softly. "Yes, Tyrone." He leaned in, lowering his voice. "And don't look at me like that when I correct you. You know I don't like that face." I blinked hard, forcing my expression to neutral. He smiled again, satisfied. "That's better." Then he kissed my cheek, quick, cold, performative. He adjusted his cufflinks in the reflection of the window. "Renee still calling you?" The question came out casual, but his tone wasn't. It was a test. "She texted once," I said carefully, "just checking in." He smirked. "She's always checking in, isn't she? That woman doesn't know when to mind her business. She means well. Yeah? He stepped closer, his voice softening in a way that made my stomach clench. You think she's going to save you, Monica? That's what she tells you, right? That you're some poor trapped woman who needs rescuing? I shook my head quickly. No, she doesn't. He chuckled, but there was no humor in it. You forget who you're married to. Renee talks too much. She starts showing up around here again. I'll handle it myself. The air thickened. I kept my eyes on the floor. He tilted my chin up with 2 fingers. You hear me? Yes, Tyrone. Good girl. The sound of his phone buzzing pulled him away. The second he was gone, I let out a long, shaky breath I didn't realize I was holding. He took the call in the living room, his voice sliding easily into that charismatic tone everyone else adored. To the world, Tyrone Pierce was a success story, a self-made man with charm to spare and a beautiful wife to prove it. No one saw what happened when the audience went home. I turned back to the oven, blinking hard until the tears dried. Then my phone vibrated on the counter. Renee Lawson. For a second, I considered ignoring it. Tyrone hated her, said she filled my head with bad ideas about boundaries. But my thumb moved before I could stop it. Hey, you, she said, voice warm, calm. You doing okay? I forced a laugh. Define okay. That bad, huh? He's got his brothers coming over tonight, I said. Big family dinner. I'm just trying not to make any mistakes. Monica, she said softly, breathing isn't a mistake. I didn't respond. Let me come by, she said after a beat. No, I said quickly. Renee, please. He'll lose it. She sighed. You know what I think? I think he's already lost it. You're just the one pretending everything's still in control. I swallowed. I just need to get through the night. She was quiet for a long moment. Then, fine, but if something happens, I'm not waiting for an invitation. Renee, promise me you'll answer if I call again. I promise, I whispered. Good, she said. Now breathe, and remember who you are when he's not looking. The line went dead, but her words stayed. I wiped my hands on a towel, listening to Tyrone laugh in the next room. The same laugh that sounded so easy in public, but turned to ice behind closed doors. He'd never believed that someone like Renee, calm, professional, and fearless, could see through him. But she did, and somewhere deep inside me, I hoped she'd keep her promise. By 6:30, the house was glowing like a magazine spread, candles lit, napkins folded, dinner steaming on the table, and me, perfectly still, wearing a smile that felt more like a mask than a face. Tyrone stood in front of the mirror by the hallway, straightening his tie like a man prepping for a televised interview. Remember, he said, watching my reflection instead of me, keep your answers short. Don't interrupt, and don't bring up work unless someone asks. I nodded. Yes, Tyrone. He adjusted his cufflinks, satisfied. Good girl. The sound of the doorbell broke through the silence. His brothers had arrived, right on time. The night had begun. Anthony walked in first, his booming voice filling the foyer. Man, this place looks fancy. Monica, you gone all out tonight. Reggie followed, grin wide and easy. You know my brother doesn't play about presentation. Tyrone chuckled, pride swelling. You know me? Standards, gentlemen, standards. They laughed as they moved toward the dining room. I trailed behind with the wine bottle, silent, invisible. As they sat, Tyrone poured the first glass and raised it. To family, he said, and to my promotion. Hard work pays off. Cheers to that, Anthony said, clinking glasses. Reggie grinned. And to Monica, for holding it down while he chased that dream. That part made me pause. For a second, I thought it might actually be kind, but then Tyrone added, Yeah, holding it down, mostly. You remember last month's gala? Tell them what happened, babe. The air shifted. I blinked. What? The charity event, he said, smiling. That dangerous, casual smile. Tell them about your big moment. I froze. He was doing it again, turning my worst humiliation into entertainment. Reggie smirked. Oh, this sounds good. Tyrone leaned back, voice dripping with amusement. So, my wife here was supposed to introduce our company rep to a donor. Simple. Small talk, handshake, the basics. But guess what she does? She forgets the man's name halfway through the sentence. Laughter erupted. Anthony slapped the table. Come on, Monica. I forced a weak smile. It was just a slip. Tyrone cut me off. A slip? Baby, you froze like a deer in headlights. I had to step in and finish your sentence for you. The brothers laughed again, wine glasses clinking. Every word stung. But it wasn't new. It was just another night in the play he'd written. The perfect husband and his clumsy wife, and like always, I played my part. Reggie wiped his eyes, still laughing. Man, you got patience, Ty. My girl messes up like that, I'm taking the mic myself. Oh, he did, Tyrone said proudly. Saved the day, didn't I, baby? I swallowed, keeping my tone even. You did. See? He turned to them. She knows she needs a little supervision. Anthony grinned. You trained her right. Something inside me snapped. A quiet, private snap no one heard but me. I looked down at my hands under the table, fingers clenched tight, nails biting skin. They didn't even notice. Tyrone kept going, warming to his audience. She gets nervous easy, bless her heart. Always been soft like that. Remember when she burned the roast on my birthday, Reggie? Reggie laughed. Oh, man, I do. You told her, this ain't a funeral, why's the meat black? They laughed harder. Tyrone looked at me like I should laugh too, so I did. A hollow, brittle sound that hurt my throat. That's my girl, he said, satisfied. She can take a joke. The food grew cold as the stories kept coming, each one sharper, smaller, cutting pieces off me one by one. To anyone else, it sounded like teasing. But I knew better. Every jab was a reminder of what would happen later when the guests were gone. When I reached for my wine glass, my hand trembled. I told myself it was just exhaustion. Then Tyrone's voice softened, almost kind. You okay, sweetheart? You're awfully quiet. The table stilled. He wanted me to perform again, to prove how obedient I'd become. I forced a smile. I'm fine, Reggie smirked. You better speak up, Monica. He doesn't like mutes. Tyrone laughed, pretending to scold him. Don't tease her, man. She's sensitive. Then, turning to me, he added, Aren't you, baby? Yes, I whispered. The brothers grinned, and in that moment, I realized I wasn't even a person to them, just a prop in his story. Tyrone poured more wine. Come on, babe, tell them something funny. Don't make me carry the whole show. My throat tightened. The room swayed with heat and humiliation. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. Anthony chuckled. See? Stage fright. Tyrone leaned back, victorious. Told you. She's shy. Always was. The laughter filled the space again, bouncing off the walls, drowning me. The edges of the room blurred, like the air itself was too heavy. That's when it happened. A knock. Soft, deliberate. 3 taps against the front door. No one heard it. Not over the noise. Not over the chorus of men performing manhood around a dying dinner. But I did. I froze, fork halfway to my mouth, eyes flicking toward the hallway. That sound, steady, patient, sliced through the haze. Tyrone was still talking. Gotta keep her humble, you know. A woman like Monica, she forgets who's running the show sometimes. And then it came again. The door opening. My breath caught. Footsteps, light but certain, moved across the hardwood. The laughter faltered. And then, a voice. Calm, firm, familiar, cut clean through the air. Funny, she said. I knocked, but I guess you couldn't hear me over all the laughter. Renee Lawson had arrived. Uninvited, unapologetic, and exactly on time. For a moment, nobody moved. Renee's presence filled the doorway like a truth no one wanted to face. She stood tall in a sand-colored coat, her hair pulled back, eyes steady, unbothered by the awkward silence she'd just dropped into. Tyrone recovered first. He forced a laugh that didn't sound real. "Well, if it isn't Monica's shadow, we're in the middle of dinner, Renee." Renee smiled lightly. "Oh, I can see that. Looked more like a performance, though. I didn't want to interrupt the show." Anthony gave a nervous chuckle, glancing at Reggie. Maybe we should—" "No," Tyrone snapped, his jaw tightening. "We're fine. Renee was just leaving." Renee folded her arms. "You know, that's the thing about bullies, Tyrone. You always assume people will walk away when you tell them to." The word bullies hit the air like a gunshot. Anthony froze mid-breath. Reggie's smile fell. Tyrone's tone dropped low. "You're out of line." "Am I?" she asked quietly. "Or are you just not used to being called out in front of an audience that isn't laughing?" He stood up, his chair scraping hard against the floor. "Watch your mouth." Renee didn't flinch. She turned her gaze to me instead. "You okay, Monica?" My lips parted, but no sound came. It felt strange, being seen, being spoken to like I mattered in a room where I'd spent years being erased. Tyrone stepped between us, his voice cutting. "Don't talk to my wife." Renee tilted her head. "Oh, I think she's earned the right to be spoken to, not just at." That did it. The brothers sank deeper into their seats, sensing the shift. Tyrone's image, so carefully curated, was cracking under the weight of a woman who wasn't afraid of him. He forced a smirk. "You think you're helping her, Renee? You're making her look weak." "She doesn't need my help for that," Renee said evenly. "You've spent years doing it for her." The room went dead quiet. Renee's voice stayed calm, controlled, but her eyes burned. "Every joke you've made at her expense, every story you've turned into a punchline, it's not humor, it's control. And you're not funny, Tyrone. You're just loud." His jaw tightened. "You don't know what goes on in my house." "Oh, I do," Renee said softly. "Because every time you break her down, she calls me to put her back together." My heart twisted. Tyrone's face changed. Not anger, not yet, but panic disguised as rage. Anthony cleared his throat, trying to cut the tension. "Hey man, let's—" "Shut up, Anthony!" Tyrone barked. The silence returned, heavier this time. Renee didn't move. "You see that?" she said quietly, gesturing to him. "That right there. You think control equals strength, but the strongest man in this room is the one who can face himself. And you've never done that, Tyrone." He laughed, but it came out hollow. "You think you know me?" "I know what it looks like when someone builds their worth on someone else's silence," she said. "I know what it's like to perform happiness for people who wouldn't notice if you disappeared tomorrow, and I know a man who's afraid of being ordinary when I see one." The words hit like a storm breaking glass. For the first time, Tyrone had no script. He just stood there, staring at her, the mask slipping inch by inch. Renee turned to me again. "You ready to stop shrinking, Monica?" Something inside me trembled, but it wasn't fear this time. It was recognition. My voice came out fragile, but real. I think so." Tyrone snapped toward me. "Don't start, Monica. Not tonight." Renee's tone stayed calm. "Tonight's exactly the night. You've humiliated her enough. Time for her to tell her own story." He opened his mouth, but she stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper that still carried. "Or maybe you're just scared of what she'll say." The room went still again. Even the candlelight seemed to pause. Tyrone looked from Renee to me, searching, calculating, losing ground. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't look away. For a heartbeat, the room felt hollow, as if all the air had been sucked out and replaced with something heavier. Tyrone's jaw twitched. His hands, always so steady, clenched on the back of his chair. "You done?" he asked, his voice low, dangerous. Renee didn't answer. She didn't have to. Her silence said everything. Anthony shifted uncomfortably. "Tyrone, man, maybe just—" "Don't," Tyrone snapped. "Don't try to mediate. You think you know my wife better than me? You think she does?" Renee met his glare with that same calm defiance. I don't think. I know, because I listen when she speaks. Tyrone turned toward me. You told her things? His tone wasn't a question. It was an accusation. My throat closed. For years, my instinct had been to shrink, to placate, to keep him calm. But something inside me cracked wide open. A slow, quiet rebellion that had been growing since the moment Renee's voice filled that doorway. Yes, I said. The word hung between us like thunder. Tyrone blinked. What did you say? I said yes, I repeated, louder this time. I told her things, because I needed someone who actually listened. Anthony's eyes darted between us. Bro, sit down. It's not worth it. But Tyrone didn't hear him. His face had gone red, his control unraveling thread by thread. You embarrassed me in front of my family, and now you're trying to... Renee cut him off, her tone steady. No, Tyrone, you embarrassed yourself. He laughed, a sharp, hollow sound that didn't reach his eyes. You think this is some movie, Renee? You think walking in here gives you the right to tell me how to run my house? Renee took a single step forward. You don't have a house, Tyrone. You have a hostage. The words landed like a slap. Anthony's glass hit the table with a dull clink. Reggie muttered something under his breath, staring down at his plate. For a long time, no one spoke. Then Tyrone turned to me, his voice dropping into that cold, quiet tone I'd come to dread. You've been talking behind my back, telling people I mistreat you, after everything I've done for you. I felt my heart hammering, but this time I didn't let the fear win. I stood. My chair scraped the floor, sharp and final. Everything you've done for me? I said, my voice trembling but rising. You mean everything you've done to me? His eyes widened slightly, not with guilt, but disbelief. He'd never seen me talk back. You've humiliated me in front of strangers, your family, our friends, I continued. You've chipped away at me piece by piece and called it love. You don't even see me, Tyrone. You see your reflection, the perfect husband everyone claps for. Renee watched silently, her presence like a shield beside me. Tyrone's voice cracked. You done rehearsing your speech? I'm not rehearsing, I said. I'm remembering. Anthony rubbed his face, muttering, Man, this is too much. No, Renee said quietly. This is what truth sounds like. Tyrone's mask was crumbling fast now. He turned to his brothers, searching for an ally. Y'all just gonna sit there and let her disrespect me like this? Anthony avoided his gaze. Reggie shook his head slowly. She ain't wrong, man. That stopped him cold. What? Tyrone demanded. Reggie sighed. We've seen it, bro. You always making her the punchline. We just laughed because it was easier. Silence again. The candles flickered low, their light trembling across Tyrone's face. He looked smaller somehow, like a man who'd spent years believing his own mythology and just realized no one else did anymore. Get out, he said finally, his voice breaking. All of you. Renee raised an eyebrow. That's the first good idea you've had all night. But instead of moving, I reached for my purse on the chair. He frowned. Where are you going? I looked him in the eye, really looked. And for the first time, he didn't look like the man I'd married. He looked like a boy who'd spent too long pretending to be powerful. I'm not going, I said quietly. You are. He blinked, confused. You can keep the house, the furniture, the trophies, all the things that prove you're somebody, I said. But you don't get to keep me. Renee's hand brushed my arm, steadying me. Anthony rose slowly. Come on, man, he said to Tyrone. Let's go cool off. Tyrone didn't move. His eyes darted to me, searching for the old version of me, the one who would back down. But she wasn't here anymore. I turned toward the hallway, heart pounding, breath shaking but steady. Renee, I said softly. You coming? She nodded. Always. Behind us, the house stayed silent, except for the sound of Tyrone's pride collapsing in on itself. As we stepped out into the cool Charlotte night, I felt the air hit my face, sharp, clean, new, and for the first time in years, it didn't hurt to breathe. The night swallowed us whole. Charlotte's skyline shimmered faintly in the distance, rows of golden light fading against the dark. Renee's car hummed softly along the road, the wipers clicking rhythmically as a light rain began to fall. Neither of us spoke for a while. The silence wasn't awkward. It was heavy, the kind of silence that follows explosions. Every breath felt too loud, every heartbeat echoing with the finality of what had just happened. Through the passenger window, I watched the light smear into streaks of color. My reflection stared back at me. Pale, eyes swollen, mouth trembling. A woman I barely recognized. "Seatbelt," Renee said quietly. I blinked, startled, and buckled it with shaky hands. She gave a small nod, eyes still on the road. "Good." A minute passed, 2, then 5. The sound of tires against wet pavement filled the space between us. Finally she spoke. "You okay?" The question was simple, but my throat tightened around it. I wanted to say yes, that I felt powerful, free, untouchable. But the truth was, I felt hollow. "I don't know," I whispered. "I think so. Maybe not yet." Renee nodded, as if she understood. "That's normal. You've been holding your breath for years. Takes time to remember how to breathe again." Her words cracked something open inside me. A tear slipped down before I could stop it. "I thought I'd never actually do it," I said softly. "Every time I imagined leaving, it felt impossible, like trying to walk off a moving train." Renee glanced at me briefly. "You didn't walk off, baby. You jumped." A shaky laugh escaped me, quiet but real. "Doesn't feel brave." "It doesn't have to," she said. "It just has to be done." We drove past rows of sleeping houses, porches glowing faintly, mailboxes lined up like soldiers. Somewhere inside, families were finishing dinner, watching TV, arguing softly about nothing that would matter in the morning. Normal, ordinary. Things that used to feel 1,000 miles away. I turned toward her. "What if he doesn't stop? What if he shows up?" "He won't," Renee said firmly. "Not tonight. He's too busy figuring out how to fix the story in his head. Men like that? They care more about saving face than facing truth." Her certainty steadied me. The rain picked up, tapping against the windshield like nervous fingers. I stared at the streaks of water racing down the glass. "Do you think I was stupid?" I asked quietly. "For staying that long?" Renee's grip on the wheel tightened, then softened. "No. I think you were surviving. There's a difference." "I thought I could love him better," I said. "If I just stayed calm, worked harder, kept the peace." "Peace built on fear isn't peace," she said gently. "It's surrender. You've done enough of that." I exhaled shakily, the kind that feels like something leaving the body for good. The rain blurred the world outside until it looked like watercolor, all soft edges and muted light. "Where are we going?" I asked after a while. "My place for tonight," Renee said. "You can rest, eat something. Tomorrow we'll figure out the next step, one day at a time." The words "next step" felt foreign, like a language I used to speak but had forgotten. I closed my eyes, resting my head against the seat. The hum of the car felt almost like safety. For years, every sound in my house had meant something. Footsteps, cabinet doors, the click of a glass on the counter. Each one told me what mood Tyrone was in. Each one dictated how small I had to become. Now, the only sound was rain. And for once, it didn't mean danger. I opened my eyes again. "He looked scared," I murmured. "At the end, when I told him to leave." Renee nodded slightly. "He was. You broke the only thing he believed in. Control. Without that, he's just a man with nothing left to prove to himself." I let the silence sit for a while. Then quietly I asked, "Do you think people like that ever change?" She thought about it. "Sometimes, but not for the person they broke. They change for themselves, if they ever do." Her answer didn't sting. It just settled, true in the way hard things often are. The city lights grew brighter as we turned off the main road. The rain softened again, slowing to a mist. I felt lighter somehow. Not happy, not yet, but less haunted. "You did good tonight," Renee said suddenly. I smiled faintly. "You mean not crying?" She glanced over. "No, I mean you stayed. You didn't run when he turned ugly. You faced it. That's harder than leaving." Her words landed somewhere deep. For the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't feel like a victim. I felt like someone standing on the edge of something new, scared, unsure, but awake. We pulled into her driveway. The porch light flicked on automatically, casting a soft golden glow over the car. Renee killed the engine. The silence that followed felt full, not empty this time, but alive. She turned to me. "You ready?" I looked up at the house. A simple white porch, a welcome mat that said home, and for the first time in years, that word didn't sound like a lie. I nodded. "Yeah," I whispered. "I think I am." Renee smiled, unbuckling her seatbelt. "Then let's start there." We stepped out into the night together, the air cool and clean. And for the first time since I could remember, I didn't look back. The first thing I noticed was the stillness. No footsteps above me, no cupboards slamming, no voice calling my name like a command. Just sunlight, soft and unhurried, slipping through white curtains. For a long moment, I stayed perfectly still, afraid to move in case the quiet shattered. The sheets smelled of lavender and detergent. I didn't remember falling asleep. I must have crashed the moment Renee handed me a blanket. My body ached in strange ways, like every muscle was learning what it meant to rest. I sat up slowly. The guest room was small but warm, framed photos of Renee's nieces on the dresser, a half-burned candle on the nightstand, a Bible open to Psalms. Everything about the space felt lived in, honest. My heart stumbled a little, trying to keep up with the reality that this was not my house. And that was the point. From somewhere down the hallway came the faint sound of music, an old Aretha Franklin song humming through the kitchen speakers. I followed it, bare feet quiet on the floor. Renee stood by the counter in leggings and an oversized sweatshirt, stirring something on the stove. Steam curled up from a pot of oatmeal. The smell of cinnamon filled the air. She looked up and smiled. "Morning, Freedom." The words caught me off guard. "Morning," I managed, my voice rough. "Coffee?" she asked. I nodded, and she poured me a mug, sliding it across the island like she'd been doing it for years. For a while, we didn't talk. We just sat. 2 women, 2 cups, sunlight washing the room gold. Finally, I exhaled. "It's strange," I said quietly. "Everything feels too calm. Like the world forgot I left." Renee spooned sugar into her cup. "The world didn't forget. It's just not rushing you. You finally get to decide what time feels like." I stared at the steam rising from my coffee. He used to hate when I slept in, said lazy women waste daylight. She met my eyes. He doesn't get to define lazy or daylight anymore. Something inside me softened. The words landed gentle but deep. After breakfast, I helped her wash the dishes, even though she told me to rest. I needed to do something, anything, to remind myself I still existed. "Any plans today?" she asked. I shrugged. "I don't know. I didn't plan for after. I just planned for escape." Renee leaned against the counter. "Then today's about catching your breath. Tomorrow we figure out what comes next, if you want to call a lawyer, a friend, or just your mom." I hesitated. "She doesn't know. I never told her how bad it got." "That's okay," Renee said. "You'll tell who you're ready to tell when you're ready." Her calm steadiness was a kind of shelter. I wandered into the living room, fingers brushing across the framed quotes on her wall. "Healing isn't pretty, but it's proof you're still fighting." Another read. "You are not hard to love. You were just asked to shrink to fit someone small." My throat tightened. The sunlight shifted, catching dust motes in the air. I thought of the house I'd left. The marble floors, the wine glasses, the silence that used to feel like a cage. I wasn't sure what I felt now. Not relief exactly, something smaller, slower, a beginning. Renee joined me holding her coffee. "What's going through your head?" "I keep thinking he'll call," I said. "And I keep checking my phone even though I don't want him to." "That's habit," she said softly. "Not hope." I nodded. "I know." "You want me to hold the phone for a while?" I smiled faintly. "Maybe later." Outside, the rain from last night had stopped, leaving the streets glistening. A few kids rode their bikes past the porch, their laughter echoing faintly. The normalcy of it made my chest ache. Renee sat beside me on the couch. "You did something hard, Monica. Don't downplay it. Leaving is the hardest thing a woman like you can do." I shook my head. "You make it sound brave." "It is brave." I looked at her, tears stinging the corners of my eyes. "I feel like I'm starting from nothing." She smiled. "Good. Nothing is clean. You can build anything on it." For a while, we just sat there, letting the quiet settle around us again. At some point, she stood and handed me a notepad. "When you're ready," she said, "write down 3 things you want back. Doesn't have to be big, just what you want to feel like again." I stared at the blank page. The pen felt heavy. But then, slowly, I wrote, "Laugh without checking who's watching. Sleep without fear. Believe I'm enough." When I finished, my hands were shaking. Renee glanced over, nodded once, and whispered, "That's your map." Outside, the clouds broke apart, letting in a burst of clean light. It spilled across the living room floor, warm against my bare feet. I didn't know what tomorrow would look like, but for the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of it. The cotton t-shirt hung loose on me, soft and worn in a way that felt safe. Renee had left it folded at the end of the bed with a pair of gray sweatpants and a note that said, "For now." They smelled faintly of her laundry detergent and something warm, vanilla and peppermint. After last night's black dress, the casual comfort felt almost unreal, like I'd borrowed someone else's life. I stood by the window sipping a fresh cup of coffee, watching the morning bloom over the quiet street. A delivery truck rolled by. A jogger waved at Renee's neighbor. The ordinary rhythm of other people's days carried on, untouched by what had happened inside my world. Then my phone buzzed. Once, twice, then over and over. Renee appeared in the doorway, hair wrapped in a scarf, holding another mug. "He's calling, isn't he?" she said, no question in her tone. I nodded, the sound vibrating against my palm as I gripped the phone. 3 missed calls already, and a text, "Come home, Monica. We need to talk." Renee set the mugs down and crossed her arms. "Of course he does. Control doesn't vanish overnight." The phone buzzed again, louder this time, as if demanding attention. I started. "No." Her voice was firm, calm. "You don't owe him a conversation. You owe yourself silence." I stared at the screen. His name glowed bright. Tyrone Pierce. It looked so normal there, like a husband checking in. "I keep thinking if I just explain—" "Explain what?" Renee asked gently. "That he made you small? That he enjoyed it? You don't have to translate pain for him to understand it." The buzzing stopped. The house fell quiet again, except for the faint hum of the fridge. I set the phone face down on the table and rubbed my hands together. What if he shows up here? Renee didn't flinch. "He doesn't know my address, and even if he did, we'll handle it. You're not alone anymore." Something in her voice, steady, protective, settled the panic twisting in my stomach. We sat at the table, and after a long silence, I whispered, "I feel guilty for feeling relieved." Renee reached over, touching my hand. "Relief isn't betrayal, baby. It's oxygen. You've been holding your breath too long." The words broke something loose. Tears slipped down my face quietly. I didn't sob. I just let them come. Renee waited until I wiped my cheeks, then said softly, "You need clothes, a few things that belong to you. We'll go back today, but not alone. I'll call my cousin Marcus. He's built like a wall and doesn't ask questions." I managed a shaky smile. "You planned this?" Always do, she said. Women like me learned long ago to plan for escape routes, even when we never use them. We finished the coffee in silence. My phone lit up again. This time, a new message. From unknown number. You're making a mistake. I turned the screen toward her. He's using another number. Renee sighed. Block it. Every number. Every door he tries to open. I did. Each tap of the screen felt like cutting a rope that had held me too long. When the last one disappeared, I whispered, That feels lighter. That's because it is, Renee said, smiling. She stood and started gathering things. Keys, purse, a jacket. We'll swing by your place around noon. You'll pack what you need, nothing more. I hesitated. What if he's there? Then Marcus stands in the doorway, and you keep your head high. You walk through your own house like a guest collecting mail. 10 minutes, in and out. I nodded slowly. Renee paused near the hallway. You ready for another confession? I blinked. What? She smiled. You're not the first friend I've pulled out of a house like that. I stared at her. Really? Mm-hmm. Different names, same story. Some left and went back. Some stayed gone. But you? You've got that look in your eyes, the one that means you're done apologizing. I swallowed hard. I don't know if I'm that strong. You don't have to know, she said, slipping on her jacket. You just have to keep walking. The phone buzzed again, one last time, vibrating against the wood. We both stared at it until it stopped. Renee grabbed her keys. Leave it here. I hesitated, then nodded and set the phone down on the counter beside the cold coffee mug. Outside, the day had turned brighter, the rain-washed streets glinting under sunlight. I followed her to the car, the hem of her borrowed sweatpants brushing my ankles. As we pulled out of the driveway, Renee glanced at me. When we go back in there, remember something. What? You're not retrieving things from him. You're reclaiming what's yours. The words sank deep, heavier than I expected. For the first time in days, I straightened my shoulders. Looking ahead at the road curling toward the past, I was finally ready to face. And this time, I didn't flinch. The drive back felt shorter than I remembered. Maybe it was because the fear that used to stretch every mile into an eternity had finally loosened its grip. Renee drove with one hand on the wheel, sunglasses hiding her eyes. Her cousin Marcus followed in his truck behind us, steady as a shadow. He hadn't asked a single question when she called that morning, just said, "What time?" When we turned onto my street, my heart kicked against my ribs. The familiar row of trimmed lawns and polite mailboxes greeted me like nothing had happened. It was strange how normal everything looked, how the world could keep spinning when yours had fallen apart. The house appeared at the end of the lane, quiet, blinds drawn. Tyrone's car sat in the driveway, washed and gleaming. "He's home," I murmured. Renee's jaw tightened. "Then we keep it brief." She parked at the curb. Marcus stepped out of his truck, a solid presence in a dark jacket, nodding once before moving toward the porch. "Remember," Renee said gently, turning to me, "you're not going back. You're going through." I nodded, though my stomach churned. The walk up the driveway felt heavier than I expected. The air seemed thicker here, soaked in memories that clung to the walls like dust. When Marcus knocked, the sound echoed too loud in the quiet street. A pause. Then the door opened. Tyrone stood there, looking almost exactly the same, except smaller. His shirt was wrinkled, his eyes shadowed. He looked like a man who hadn't slept. He froze when he saw me. "You came back." I kept my voice even. "To get my things." He glanced past me at Marcus, then at Renee. "You brought an audience." "Insurance," Renee said, her tone flat. He ignored her, his focus locked on me. "You could have called, Monica. We didn't have to do this like strangers." I stepped past him without answering. The familiar scent of cedar and cologne hit me like a ghost. Every inch of the house felt both known and alien. The pictures on the wall, smiles frozen mid-lie, the couch where I'd learned to hold my breath. Renee followed quietly, staying near the entryway. Marcus remained by the door, arms crossed. I went upstairs. Each step creaked like it remembered. My closet was exactly as I'd left it, organized, color-coded, because that was what he liked. I took only what was mine: clothes, a few books, the framed photo of my mother he'd once hidden in a drawer. Downstairs, I could hear Renee's calm voice, measured and patient, keeping the conversation grounded. Tyrone's voice was lower, softer, too soft. "You letting her talk for you now?" "No," I called from the hallway, my voice carrying down the stairs. "She's just making sure you listen." When I came down, suitcase in hand, he stepped forward. "That's it? You're just leaving everything behind?" I met his eyes. "Everything that doesn't belong to me, yes." He laughed quietly, shaking his head. "You think walking out makes you stronger?" "No," I said. Surviving did. Something flickered in his expression, hurt or realization, I couldn't tell. He looked at Renee, then Marcus, then back at me. "You really think you're better than me now?" "I don't think about you at all," I said simply. For a second, neither of us moved. It wasn't hatred I felt, it was distance, like looking through glass at a life that used to be mine. Renee picked up one of the bags. "We're done here, Monica." I nodded and turned toward the door. But before I stepped out, I paused. My gaze landed on the dining table, the same one from that night. The wine stain was still there, faint but visible. Without thinking, I walked over and placed my palm flat on the surface. It was cool under my hand, solid, real. Then I whispered, more to myself than to anyone else, "You don't own my silence anymore." Tyrone didn't reply. He just stood there, staring at the space I was leaving behind. I picked up my last bag and walked out. The sunlight hit me full in the face, warm, clean, unapologetic. Marcus shut the door behind us, a final, solid click. Renee exhaled slowly. "That's that." I looked down at the suitcase handle in my hand. "Feels lighter than I expected." She smiled. "That's because it's only carrying what's yours." We walked back toward the car. The breeze carried the faint smell of jasmine from a neighbor's garden. I hadn't noticed it before. Maybe it had always been there, waiting for me to finally step outside. At the curb, I turned once more toward the house, not to mourn it, not to miss it, just to acknowledge the woman who'd once lived there. She had done her best with what she had, and now she was gone. Renee opened the passenger door. "Where to?" I thought about it for a moment, then said softly, "Anywhere that doesn't know my name yet." We climbed in, Marcus pulling out behind us. As the street rolled by and the house shrank in the rearview mirror, I realized something simple and stunning. Freedom doesn't always roar. Sometimes it just exhales. 3 weeks later, mornings still surprised me. The first few days after leaving felt like walking on water, unsteady, half expecting to sink. But somewhere between coffee cups and sunrise walks, my feet learned the ground again. Renee's guest room had become a kind of halfway world, safe, soft, a space between who I'd been and who I was becoming. I started waking before the alarm, sitting by the window while the city stretched awake. The light here moved slower, like it wasn't in a rush to prove anything. I'd found a small job at a community center downtown, part-time, helping with event planning. Nothing glamorous, but real. I liked the rhythm of it, making lists, greeting people, hearing laughter that didn't have to be measured. Some afternoons, Renee would pick me up after work, blasting old soul music while we drove with the windows down. The air always smelled like fresh rain and car exhaust, a mixture that felt alive. "See?" she said one evening as we sat in traffic, watching the sun dip behind the skyline. "You're doing it, breathing on your own again." I smiled. "Still feels strange." "It should. New air always does." At night, I wrote, not in long essays or speeches, just pieces, sentences that arrived like half-remembered dreams. I am not what he said I was. Quiet isn't a weakness. Healing sounds like laughter you don't have to earn. Sometimes I'd catch myself laughing at small things, the burnt toast, the cat next door that kept sneaking into the yard, and every time it happened, it startled me. Joy had a different weight now, lighter, less afraid of being seen. One Saturday morning, I took the bus downtown alone. I stopped at a thrift store and bought a denim jacket and a pair of books. One by Maya Angelou, another a blank journal with a gold cover. At the cafe next door, the barista asked my name for the order. For a second, the old hesitation rose up. What if he knows me? What if Tyrone somehow sees? But it faded just as fast. "Monica," I said, and it felt right again. When the cup came back with my name written in black marker, I just sat there, tracing the letters. It was such a small thing, 5 letters on a paper cup, but it looked like ownership. Later that day, Renee found me reading on her porch, sunlight across my lap. "You look peaceful," she said. "I think I am," I replied. She smiled. "Peace looks good on you." We didn't talk about Tyrone much anymore. He'd called a few more times, left one voicemail I never played, and then stopped. I didn't block the last number. I just stopped checking. Some nights I still dreamed of that house, the dinner table, the wine stain, the quiet that used to choke me. But in the dreams now, I always walked out. I'd told Renee once, "I wish I could erase everything." She'd shaken her head. "You don't erase it. You outgrow it. That's the real power." And she was right. The scars were still there, invisible but undeniable. But they didn't hum with fear anymore. They just existed, proof that I'd lived through something and kept walking. On the last Sunday of the month, I stood outside Renee's house, suitcase in hand again. This time it wasn't running. I'd found a small apartment, tiny, sunlit, with creaky floors and a window that looked out over the city. Renee hugged me tight. "You know where to find me." "Always," I said, smiling. As I drove away, the radio played quietly. Aretha again, the same song from that first morning in her kitchen. The sky above Charlotte glowed pale gold, the kind of light that doesn't demand attention but still fills every corner. For a long time, I didn't think light could reach me again. Now it did, gently, without asking permission. And as the road stretched ahead, open and endless, I whispered the only words that fit the moment. I made it. Then I rolled down the window and let the wind carry the sound away. And listen. If you've stayed with me through Monica Pierce's journey, through every cutting joke Tyrone made at her expense, every quiet tear behind closed doors, every night she chose survival over surrender, don't scroll past this moment without hitting that subscribe button. Why? Because what you just watched isn't just a story about betrayal. It's a story about reclaiming power. So go ahead, tap subscribe. Smash that like button if your heart raced when Monica finally looked Tyrone in the eye, when she stood her ground while his brother sat in stunned silence, or when she walked out that front door with nothing but her dignity and everything that truly mattered. Share this video with someone who's ever been told to stay quiet, someone who's ever been mocked for their pain, or anyone who needs to be reminded that walking away isn't weakness, it's freedom. Because if you've watched till the end, you know exactly what it feels like to see someone rise from humiliation, speak her truth out loud, and finally breathe without fear. Click the next video on your screen to uncover another shocking story of love, pride, and the unstoppable strength of a woman who refused to be silenced.